I decided, since I was not allowed to be in that room through the door, that maybe I would go to the backyard. I ended up just putting my nose right on their window, and I knocked on the window, and I said, "Hi people, I can see you." And all of them were just frozen. They never moved, because they knew deep down in their hearts that maybe they no longer could stay in the house. And that evening, when my dad came home, my mom said, "Oh, Wop, something terrible has happened. Anneke has discovered the AIDS." To this very day, I don't ever remember going into the backyard, knocking on the window, talking to them, looking at them. And I knew deep in my heart that I was supposed to forget it. And here it's more than 70 years later. And I still do not remember. I'd like to invite all of you today to go with me on a trip to Holland. From Amsterdam, we're traveling to the city of Utrecht, and we're looking for the southern part because that's where our house is. My mother's name is Heltje Bos. My father's name is Wop Kooistra. My older sister, her name is Romy. She was 7. My baby sister was only 2, and I myself was almost 4 years old. Even though the Germans had occupied Holland in 1940, life was not bad. In fact, many people did not mind since several matters had improved. But when in the year 1941, the Germans started restricting the Jewish people from using certain public facilities, it was then that the Dutch changed their minds about this occupation. In fact, when they found out that Jews were taken on transport to Germany, some of the people tried to help them. But when the Germans found those, they had to wear a sign saying Judenfreund, what meant friend of the Jews, and they received the very same fate as the Jews. When my father, who was working for the underground, found out about all this, he and my mother were confronted with the terrible, terrible problem to either know about this and not do anything, or try to do whatever they could to work against the Germans. In 1942, my parents started to hide Jewish people. One of the first people who actually came to our house was from Amsterdam and in his mid-60s. And it was maybe 6 months later that my father was asked to go to the railroad station, and this time he was looking just for one person. When he arrived, instead of only finding one Jewish man, there were 3 people waiting for him: a mother and her 22-year-old daughter. My father could not say to them, "I only want one person." So they came to our house and stayed almost for 2 years. Months later, he was asked again to go back to the railroad station, and this time he knew that he was looking for a mother and her 17-year-old daughter, Alice. And what my father and mother realized was that Alice and her mother had become very lonely for the father and also for the son. So my father went to their hiding place and brought them also to our house. As you realize, this makes 8 extra people. My father came to my mom. He said to my mom, "There's no food in the whole house." No matter how dark it was, my mother always still saw some light. And my mom's response was, "Oh, but Bob, we still have water." Another miracle, because that evening someone rang the doorbell, and when my mom opened the door, there was no one there, but she noticed that there was a small package of food on the floor. To this day, we do not know who brought that. What my parents also realized was that it was not enough to have the Jewish people stay in our house. What would happen if a soldier came to our house? Where would they go? They were able to come up with the idea that next to the stairwell, my father was able to make an opening, and then he made another opening when you entered the house. And once that was done, they were able to take out the sand that was underneath the floorboard. Where would you go with all that sand in the middle of a city? But we lived really close to a big canal. My father at night could dump the sand into the canal. And once they were finished, they had to crawl in there and then they could sit up, but they almost touched the floorboards when they were sitting up. Some of you might wonder if the Germans ever came to our house. Yes, they did. 3 times. And this is truly part of the miracles that God allowed to happen in our home. Because each time my parents had been warned ahead of time. One of our neighbors, 5 houses down from us, actually became a Nazi, but the way it turned out, he was a good Nazi. He would actually say to his next door neighbor, your sons need to leave today because tomorrow they're coming to search the homes. So that neighbor told his next door neighbor, and it would travel all through the street. We thank God that each time my parents were warned ahead of time. There came actually 3 soldiers in the house. The first soldier, when he entered, he went in the front door, right into the kitchen, out the back door so no one could escape from the back. The second one, he stayed in the long L-shaped hallway, walking back and forth, back and forth. Every step he made was so frightening for the Jewish people who were in the hiding place, because it was like they could feel it on their head. The third soldier, he was the one who was going to do the searching. He came up to my mother and asked her, where is your husband? But my mother just shrugged her shoulders and acted like she had no idea where my father was. That was the only time that my father was in the hiding place with the 8 as well. One time there was going to be a meeting held, and to announce the meeting, they had been able to create large posters, but to tease the Germans, they made it look like it was the Dutch flag. The Germans decided wherever they saw one of those posters, they would just break the window. The only house where the window was not broken was ours. The soldier actually came, went to the front door, rang the doorbell, and then when my mom opened the door, he asked my mother to come outside and please remove the poster from the window. And had they broken the window, they would have found 8 Jewish people sitting in that room, in that front room. When it was the 5th of May, 1945, it was in the evening at 10 o'clock at night that my mom actually came to our bedroom and unlocked our door and asked us to come downstairs. And as we entered this front room, we saw a big crowd of people, and everyone was hugging and everyone was crying. And that was the very first time that we were allowed to see the 8 who had lived with us. I'd like to finish by sharing with you a poem that was written by the youngest of the group. But when we hear this poem, it is so difficult to imagine that this could have been written by a teenager. Innocent. It is true, I'm innocent. Everyone knows that. No court even would judge me as guilty. and yet already my fate has been decided. But I will try and bear my burden patiently. God knows it. Maybe I will be killed. Maybe I will be deported. Maybe I will be put to labor. Too soon I will know. Who am I? I'm only a Jew.